The airport buzzed with the kind of mechanical energy that only early mornings could summon. Yawns, clinking coffee cups, rolling suitcases, and the robotic announcements over the intercom echoing through every terminal. Candace Dalton strutted through Gate C-23 in 6-inch Valentino heels that clicked confidently against the polished linoleum. A pair of oversized Chanel sunglasses covered her eyes, though it was barely 6:15 a.m. Her platinum blonde curls bounced with every step. She was a woman sculpted by image, Instagram perfect, and always 5 filters deep. Today, she was flying back to Los Angeles after a brand promotion gig in Chicago. A weekend of rooftop parties and curated brunches left her tired but fulfilled, mostly by the likes and shares flooding her feed. Her latte sloshed in one hand, the other clutched the handle of her designer tote. A boarding pass fluttered in her grip. Seat 12A? First class was booked out? Annoying. Still, she expected a quiet flight. Until she saw him. Seated in 12B was a man in uniform. His posture was straight, yet his eyes looked heavy. A duffel bag lay beneath the seat in front of him, the army patch stitched cleanly on the side. His name tag read, Cole. Candace wrinkled her nose. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her manicured fingers waving in front of him. "I think you're in my way." The soldier looked up. His hazel eyes met hers, calm but worn. "Oh, sorry," he said politely, standing slightly to let her pass. "You've got the window?" "Obviously," she said, squeezing past him with exaggerated caution. She slid into the seat and adjusted her handbag like it deserved its own seat. Ethan Cole sat back down silently. He'd just completed a grueling tour in the Middle East. 36 hours of travel, 2 layovers, no sleep, and now a 6-hour flight between him and home. He wasn't hoping for gratitude, but he certainly hadn't expected attitude. As he buckled his seatbelt, Candace glanced at him sideways. "Must be exhausting, huh?" she muttered. "Ma'am," he said, confused. "Wearing that costume around, playing hero," she said, sipping her coffee. Ethan's expression remained neutral. "It's not a costume, ma'am." "Right," she said with a smirk. "So what is it then? A job? A lifestyle? A marketing campaign?" He turned to face forward. "A duty." Candace rolled her eyes so hard it almost hurt. She took a photo of her legs stretched in front of her, the tray table, and a glimpse of Ethan's sleeve in the corner of the frame. She added a caption, "Flying coach next to Captain America. Someone save me." Ethan didn't speak again, not when the flight attendant welcomed everyone on board, not when the safety demonstration played. He just closed his eyes and leaned back. Candace scrolled through her phone, scrolled past Ethan's face, past her reflection, past anything that might feel remotely uncomfortable. Across the aisle, a little boy wearing a Spider-Man backpack waved at Ethan. The soldier smiled gently, giving him a casual salute. Candace watched with a scoff. "Charming." "You'd be surprised how far kindness goes," Ethan murmured, without looking at her. She crossed her arms, offended. "I don't need a lecture." "I wasn't giving one." The aircraft started to taxi. Outside, snow flurries danced across the runway, a white curtain parting just enough for takeoff. Candace pulled out a compact mirror and reapplied her lip gloss. "What are you, some kind of war addict? People still do that voluntarily?" Ethan sighed, but didn't rise to the bait. She wasn't interested in answers. She was interested in being heard. "What do you even do all day? March around? Carry guns? Boss people around?" Ethan turned to look at her, his voice even. "Some days, it's building schools. Others, it's evacuating wounded civilians. Sometimes, it's writing letters to parents explaining why their son didn't make it back." That made her blink. For the first time, she had no immediate retort. Still, she reached for her latte, hiding behind its cardboard shield. "Sounds depressing." "It's life," Ethan said. "Not always pretty, but real." The plane lifted off the ground, and as the city below became a shrinking grid of lights, silence returned between them. Candace leaned back, arms folded, foot tapping. She didn't understand this man. Why he was so calm. Why he didn't bite back. Why he made her feel small. Ethan just stared out the window, one hand resting on the dog tags tucked beneath his collar. The flight had reached cruising altitude. Trays clicked open, earbuds were popped in, and the cabin began to hum with mid-air rituals. Snacking, napping, scrolling. Candace adjusted her seat and popped a mint into her mouth with theatrical elegance. Ethan hadn't said another word since takeoff, and she liked it better that way. There was something about him, stoic, silent, grounded, that made her uncomfortable. She didn't understand that kind of quiet. Silence in her world meant irrelevance. She decided to distract herself. Out came her phone again. She had videos to edit. The lighting from her hotel rooftop shoot was perfect. She inserted slow-motion effects, added background music, cropped her waist just a little, and tapped out a caption. Sunsets and success. Don't talk to me if you're still figuring life out. Satisfied, she hit post. Next to her, Ethan finally stirred, reaching into his duffel bag and pulling out a small worn notebook. The edges were curled. The cover, black and faded, was cracked in places. He turned to a page and began writing, his pen gliding with a slow rhythm. Candace tried not to look, tried not to care, but curiosity edged in. "What's that?" she asked, her voice dripping with passive judgment. He glanced over. "A journal." "What are you, 12?" He smiled faintly. "It's for letters." "Letters? Like handwritten?" He nodded. "To my wife and my daughter." Candace scoffed. "You can't just FaceTime them like a normal person?" "They're not around anymore." The words dropped like a stone in her stomach. Her eyes widened. She turned to him, unsure what to say. But Ethan was already flipping another page, his jaw clenched tighter than before. "I'm sorry," she muttered, the first flicker of discomfort settling into her tone. "No need," he said simply. "Not your burden to carry." For a second, silence reclaimed the space between them. "I lost them 3 years ago," he continued quietly. "Drunk driver. They were headed home from a fall festival. My little girl had painted a pumpkin, said she wanted to be a unicorn that year." Candace didn't blink, didn't move. She wasn't used to real conversations. This was raw, untouched, unfiltered. "I was stationed overseas," he added. "Didn't even get to say goodbye." Her lips parted slightly, but the words tangled in her throat. "I'm sorry," she repeated. This time it sounded different. Ethan closed the notebook and returned it to the bag. "You ever lose someone?" Candace hesitated. "Not like that. My dad left when I was a kid. That's all." "That's a kind of loss, too," he said gently. She didn't expect that. She had built her whole persona on not needing anyone. But now, this soldier was looking at her like she wasn't invisible. Like he saw right through her curated confidence. "I guess I just learned to depend on myself," she admitted. "Nothing wrong with that," he replied. "But sometimes the armor we build ends up caging us in." She blinked, stunned by how accurately he'd described her. Across the aisle, the little boy in the Spider-Man backpack was coloring in a puzzle book. He kept sneaking glances at Ethan. After a few moments, he leaned across and whispered something to his mother. The woman smiled and nodded. The boy turned to Ethan, mustering courage. "Excuse me, sir? Are you a real soldier?" Ethan smiled warmly. "Yes, I am." The boy's face lit up. "That's so cool. Thank you for saving people." Ethan chuckled. "Thank you for saying that." Candace watched this moment like it was a movie. Unrehearsed, honest, touching. For once, her mind wasn't thinking of hashtags or lighting or angles. Just people. She looked out the window, lost in the stretch of clouds. "I never really think about people like you," she said quietly. "Like, I know soldiers exist, but it's not something I ever think about." Ethan looked at her. "Most people don't. That's okay." "No, it's not," she said. "I've spent the last 5 years building a life around likes and trends. But I couldn't name one person serving in the military. He didn't judge her. He didn't speak. He just listened. I thought you were just stiff, arrogant, she confessed. And I thought you were just shallow, he said with a calm smile. Candace laughed, genuinely this time. Guess we were both kinda right. Maybe, he said. But people are rarely only one thing. She looked at him, really looked at him. His face was tired but kind. The creases around his eyes weren't from age, they were from experience. Why are you going to L.A.? She asked. Funeral, he said. One of my men didn't make it back. His family asked me to speak. Candace felt something clench in her chest. And you're just calm? I'm not calm, he said. I'm carrying it. But some things you carry quietly. The plane hit a small patch of turbulence. Her coffee sloshed slightly. She reached for the tray and steadied it, suddenly aware of how shaken she felt inside. Ethan closed his eyes again, and Candace just sat there, quietly. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like posting anything. She just felt. The descent into Los Angeles began with a soft chime and a flicker of overhead lights. Passengers slowly came to life, stretching, adjusting their seats, organizing belongings for landing. Candace hadn't spoken for over an hour. She sat staring out the window, her reflection mirrored in the pale blue sky, layered over thin ribbons of clouds. Something had shifted inside her, quietly, like a curtain lifting on a stage she never knew existed. Ethan remained silent, his hands folded, eyes closed, but his presence had rooted itself in her mind, refusing to fade. As the plane tilted in its descent, the first glimpses of Los Angeles emerged, mountains etched in smog, interwoven highways, and homes stacked like puzzle pieces across the hillsides. The seatbelt light chimed again. Ethan opened his eyes and turned to her. Thanks for the conversation. She blinked. Wait, I should thank you. You don't have to, he replied. I want to, she said. You made me think about things I've avoided. He nodded, offering her a kind smile. That's more than most people ever do. The wheels touched the tarmac with a soft screech. A low murmur filled the cabin as passengers gathered coats and backpacks. Flight attendants smiled mechanically while giving the usual farewells over the intercom. Candace stood, smoothing her hair and adjusting her bag. Ethan grabbed his duffel and slung it over his shoulder. Before he stepped into the aisle, he looked back at her. Take care of yourself, Candace. She was startled. You remembered my name. He smiled. You never asked for mine. She stared at him, surprised. I'm Ethan Cole, he said, then turned and moved down the aisle. She wanted to say something, anything, but by the time she gathered her thoughts, he was gone. Candace exited the plane in a daze. The terminal was loud, familiar, filled with the chaos she usually thrived in. But today, it felt hollow. She pulled her phone from her purse and opened Instagram, ready to post a boomerang of her arrival. But the blank caption field stared at her like a mirror. What could she possibly say? She closed the app. As she made her way toward the baggage claim, her phone buzzed with a news notification. She glanced down. Breaking, local soldier killed in combat, honored in L.A. ceremony today. Her breath hitched. The photo attached to the article showed a grieving mother beside a coffin draped in the American flag. In the background, standing just behind the family, was Ethan. The headline read, Sergeant Ethan Cole to deliver eulogy at memorial for fallen brother-in-arms. Candace's feet slowed to a stop. She read the article, every word. Her heart squeezed tighter with each sentence. The soldier being honored was 23. He'd been engaged. He'd saved 3 civilians in his final moments. And Ethan had flown straight from deployment to ensure this man's sacrifice wasn't just a name in a headline. Candace leaned against the wall as the weight of it all crashed into her. The silence he carried, the pain behind his eyes, the journal, the loss of his wife and daughter, and still he had sat beside her calmly, kindly, even as she mocked what he stood for. Her chest ached with a guilt she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. She scrolled down to the bottom of the article. There, she found a video clip. Live. Memorial for Specialist James Donnelly. She pressed play. The video opened to a modest outdoor gathering. Rows of white chairs lined with grieving families. A folded flag handed to a sobbing woman. And Ethan, standing at the podium, composed and clear. James was more than a soldier, Ethan said in the video. He was a brother, a protector, a young man who laughed too loud, danced too terribly, and loved his fiancée with all he had. And he died saving lives. That is who we honor today, not with sorrow alone, but with pride. Tears blurred her vision. She slid down onto the bench beside her, the terminal spinning gently. All those years she'd spent crafting a perfect image, all the shallow conversations and self-promotion. And in just a few hours, a stranger had unraveled all of it, not with anger, but with truth. And now he was standing under a sky filled with flags and tears, giving a eulogy to someone who had died for others, while she was trying to figure out the best filter for her morning latte. Her hand trembled as she opened Instagram again, but this time, she didn't scroll for vanity. She searched for something real. She found Ethan's name mentioned in a few tagged posts from the memorial. One had a picture of him standing next to the family, hand on their shoulder. No posing, no spotlight, just support. She screenshotted it. Then she opened a new post. For the first time in years, she didn't use a filter. The caption read, "I sat next to this man on a plane yesterday and had no idea what he was carrying. I judged him because I didn't understand him, because I've spent too long looking at life through a shallow lens. His name is Sergeant Ethan Cole. Today, he gave a eulogy for a fallen hero. And I will never be the same. Real heroes. Perspective. Thank you." She hit post. Then she wiped her face with her sleeve, stood up, and walked forward. Back home in her apartment, Candace sat on the floor in front of her full-length mirror. Not to pose, not to practice her next selfie angle, but to stare. At herself. The walls around her were lined with trophies of superficial success. Ring lights, a marble-topped vanity, racks of trendy clothes, and boxes of untouched PR packages. A pile of unopened fan mail sat in a corner, overshadowed by her sleek MacBook and a neon pink planner. None of it felt real anymore. Her phone vibrated on the floor beside her. She picked it up, hundreds of notifications. Her post about Ethan had gone viral. Comments flooded in from strangers, some shocked, some thankful, others just stunned by her vulnerability. "Wow, I've followed you for years. This is the first time I've ever felt something from your posts. I cried reading this. Thank you for sharing. My brother's a soldier. People never see them. Thank you for this. We need more of this on the internet." Candace put the phone down. Her hands trembled. Not with fear, but with something else. Awareness. She'd built an entire empire on validation. And yet, in one single honest post, she'd found something she hadn't in years. Connection. Later that night, she drafted a message. To Ethan Cole, subject, "I owe you more than an apology. Hi Ethan, I don't know if you'll read this, or even remember me, but I wanted to thank you and say I'm sorry. Not just for how I judged you on the plane, but for how I've lived, selfishly. That flight cracked something open inside me. I've spent years pretending to be someone I'm not. You showed me that real strength has nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with grace. Your words, your silence, your pain. They changed me. I hope the memorial went well. I watched the video. You spoke beautifully. If you ever want to grab coffee, or, honestly, even if you don't, I just wanted you to know. Thank you, Candace." She stared at the message for several minutes before hitting send. The next morning, she woke up expecting to feel silly, embarrassed, but instead she felt grounded. She turned on her phone, more messages, more comments, people sharing their own stories of loved ones in the military, of pain, of change. And one email reply. From Ethan. From Ethan Cole. Subject. I owe you more than an apology. Candace. Of course I remember you. Your message meant more than I can say. Grief teaches us different things. For me, it taught that bitterness only multiplies pain. So I try not to carry it. I'm glad our conversation sparked something in you. And I would take that coffee. Not for thanks, but for company. I'm still in LA for a few days. Let me know when. Take care, Ethan. She reread it several times. And then she smiled. Not for the likes, not for the attention, but for something that felt a lot like hope. The cafe was small, intentionally so. No neon lights, no filters, just weathered wood tables, a few indoor plants, and the scent of roasted beans lingering like comfort in the air. Candace arrived early. No makeup, no designer heels, just jeans, a sweater, and a slight tremble in her hands. She had chosen a table by the window. The seat across from her remained empty, and she found herself nervous, more than she'd ever been before a brand pitch or photo shoot. This was different. This mattered. Then she saw him. Ethan walked in wearing a navy pullover and jeans, a book tucked under his arm. He looked less like a soldier and more like someone who carried both strength and sorrow with quiet grace. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, offering a genuine smile. There was a moment of silence, not awkward, but weighted with mutual understanding. "I wasn't sure if you'd really come," she admitted. He tilted his head. "I wouldn't have missed it." The server arrived, took their orders, black coffee for him, a chai latte for her, and left them in their unspoken calm. Candace looked down. "I've never had a conversation like the one we had on the plane." "I get that a lot," Ethan replied with a faint smirk. She laughed softly. "It's just, you live in a completely different world, and I've spent so long stuck in mine, thinking it was the only one that mattered." He sipped his coffee when it came. "Everyone lives in a bubble. Most just don't realize it." "You do?" "I didn't, once," he admitted. "But losing everything changes what you see. I used to think my life was bulletproof. Then the wrong deployment, the wrong road, and I came home to silence." Candace swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. About your family. About what happened." He met her eyes. "It's not your fault, but thank you." She paused, fiddling with her cup. "I used to think vulnerability was weakness, that showing pain meant you'd lost, but you sat there, grieving, and still offered kindness. You made me want to be better." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not getting over it, just using the pain differently." She nodded. They talked for hours, about loss, about shame, about the strange, quiet ache of reevaluating your purpose, about the difference between influence and impact. She shared how her father had once served briefly, but she'd never understood him, how she'd buried her discomfort in filters and fame. Ethan shared how he wrote letters to his daughter every week, even now, never mailing them, just releasing thoughts into the ether. By the time the sun dipped below the hills and the cafe lights dimmed, Candace had laughed, cried, and rediscovered a part of herself she'd forgotten existed. As they stood to leave, Ethan handed her the book he'd brought. It was a well-worn journal, wrapped in a leather cover. "I think you should have this," he said. "It's empty. But it helped me." She opened it. The first page was blank. I don't even know what to write." He smiled. "Start with the truth." 2 weeks later, Candace sat cross-legged on her living room floor, the leather-bound journal open before her. Half of it was now filled, pages of raw thoughts, sketches, poems, even letters to herself. She'd written every morning with her coffee. No sponsors, no followers, no filters. Just herself, confronting the mirror she had ignored for years. That morning, as the light filtered through gauzy curtains, she turned to a blank page and began again. But this time, not in the journal. She turned on her camera, not the front-facing one on her phone, not for an Instagram story. Her real camera, used last for a long-forgotten travel vlog, was now perched on a tripod. She pressed record. Candace looked straight into the lens. No makeup, no music, no script. Just sincerity. Hi. I've been online for a long time, but I think this is the first time I've truly shown up. 2 weeks ago, I met a man on a flight. A soldier. A father. A widower. I judged him. Silently at first, then out loud. I embarrassed him. I humiliated myself. But then he did something I never expected. He listened, and more than that, he forgave me. I didn't know what real strength looked like until I saw a man carry unimaginable pain with grace. And that moment, his patience, his silence, shattered something in me. Not in a bad way, in the best way. For years, I've measured my worth in followers, likes, and campaigns. I've sold skincare and confidence like they were interchangeable. But that day, I realized how empty I'd become. I met someone real, and I saw myself, really saw myself, for the first time in years. So here's what I've decided. I'm not deleting my platform. I'm transforming it. Starting now, this space won't be about perfection. It will be about purpose. Every week, I'll highlight a veteran's story. I'll donate every sponsorship dollar to organizations that support military families. And today, I want to honor Ethan Cole, the man who changed my life on Flight 276. You didn't ask for thanks, Ethan, but you deserve a world of them. This one's for you. She ended the video, her voice thick but steady. Then she posted it. Not with a clickbait caption. Just 3 words, I see you. By noon, her inbox overflowed. But this time, the messages weren't brand deals. They were stories. From children of deployed parents, from soldiers, from strangers, and from Ethan. Subject, your voice matters. Candace, that video, you don't know how many people you've reached. I went to the cemetery today. I told my wife and daughter about you, about how you turned a hard moment into something bigger. That's the thing about pain. It either closes you or opens the world. Keep opening it. And if you ever want help sharing more stories, I'm here. Ethan. Candace clutched the letter to her chest. Her tears came, not from shame or sadness, but release. In a world that had once celebrated her for who she pretended to be, she was finally being seen for who she really was. Weeks turned into months. The campaign grew. Veterans shared videos. Followers became volunteers. A major nonprofit even reached out to collaborate. And Ethan? He kept in touch. They met often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for silence. There was no romance, at least not yet, but there was something more powerful: respect, humanity, healing. 1 year later, Candace stood on stage, lights dimmed, a single photo behind her, a young soldier holding a baby girl, Ethan's wife, his daughter. The audience was silent, a crowd of over 1,000, at a charity gala she organized for military families. She cleared her throat, her voice steady. A year ago, I was a stranger to humility. Now, I understand that the greatest gift we can give is seeing someone for who they are. This foundation began with one moment of ugliness, and one man's quiet forgiveness. And if this story has taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin when we're brave enough to look in the mirror and listen. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, and somewhere in the front row, Ethan stood too, his eyes shining, his heart lighter, not because justice had been served, but because kindness had bloomed in its place. Never underestimate the power of a quiet soul. In a world full of noise, true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it sits across from you on a plane, grieving silently, offering grace where there should be anger. Candace's story reminds us that people can change when they choose to listen, learn, and lead with empathy. And that sometimes it takes one moment to wake up to your purpose. Thanks for watching the video. Have you ever come across similar encounter? Let me know in the comments. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more interesting tales. Till then, stay safe and stay smart.